So the MCU kind of sucks, but I'm here for it. Everyone and their mom is mad at the MCU. And you know it's with pretty good reason, because tell me how the Marvel Cinematic Universe went from this to this. Before we go any further, I think it is important to note that my last real opinion on the MCU was that it should have ended with Endgame. Disney was just about to buy Fox, so the MCU was going to have all the Fantastic Four and X-Men characters to play around with in addition to the standard MCU fare. And they had something of an arrangement with Sony, so they more or less had Spider-Man, even if they don't seem to have access to all the characters yet. Of course, they did not, so that opinion doesn't much matter. But it's fun to see that, in a sense, I am kind of right, because the studio doesn't seem to be handling the post-Infinity Saga story very well so far. I mean, think about it. After Endgame, we got Spider-Man Far From Home. Yes, Far From Home, which was when we realized we decided to die on the hill of home as the Spider-Man subtitles. It wasn't that memorable a movie, if you ask me. Most people don't talk about it now. 2020 was the MCU's vacation as a result of the panoramic. And then in 2021, everybody expected the MCU to come back with a bang, and they came back with a whimper in the form of Black Widow. Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, and Spider-Man No Way Home. Only one of which was worthwhile in my opinion, which was Shang-Chi. Black Widow was subpar, to say the least. Spider-Man No Way Home, which most viewers loved, if the box office numbers are any indication, to me it was just a lot of nostalgia beats, and it's fine, right? I can see why most people love it, but personally I don't care that much for it. And then this year they've hit us back to back with two very mediocre films: Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and Thor: Love and Thunder. And don't even get me started on the shows from last year. And before anyone comes at me with the whole Loki and Moon Knight and the exception thing, I need you people to think back to 2017 when Game of Thrones was in its prime. Have you felt from any of the MCU shows how you felt during Game of Thrones? The MCU has not given us that. Everything has been made. Loki was a 6-episode long trailer for Loki season 2, which will probably be a 6-episode long trailer for whatever movie Kang is going to show up in. For Moon Knight, I watched and loved the first episode, but it seemed like something that was going to disappoint me, so I didn't bother. And wouldn't you know it, most people I know that kept up with the show till the end were unsatisfied with it. And other than those two shows, nothing else has been worth noting. She-Hulk, which as at the time of this recording should be on like episode 5 or something, is a meme. She-Hulk is a meme. I want to believe it is intentionally a meme, but I can see it's been some people's thing. The only other MCU show that I think is worth noting is What If, and What If had 9 episodes. I liked 3 of them. The other 6 were fair enough. I don't think any episode was terrible. And the fact that everything seemed disjointed, at least until the end, made it easier to enjoy the isolated good episodes, unlike the heavily serialized shows we've been getting with everything else. Honestly, I think the problem with the MCU is that maybe, just maybe, the MCU doesn't get the MCU. What worked for the MCU originally was the fact that it was very experimental, in the sense that the appeal, at least for me, the appeal of the Avengers film, the first Avengers film, was the blending of the characters from vastly different worlds. Iron Man was a sci-fi type of thing. Captain America was historical fiction drama, sort of. And Thor was some weird Shakespeare fantasy shit. And then they brought all of those guys into an ensemble film with some other characters. I mean, remember the tone of Hulk, of the Incredible Hulk movie from 2009 or so. And as they went on, they just continued to make the entire universe more and more homogenous, abandoning the appeal of having very distinct styles for very different characters and films. It's no longer a bringing together of worlds, it just feels like one never-ending plot. And that's ignoring the fact that a lot of the recent movies seem to heavily prioritize how many surprise cameos they can fit into each film. And so the plot seems to suffer. The characterization of most of our lead characters is borderline non-existent, because there's not much difference between Thor, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, and Iron Man at this point, except for their names, the actors playing them, and their powers. They're all quippy characters. Everybody feels like everybody now. Because not only do they homogenize the tone and genre of the films in the MCU, but they also homogenize the lead characters, at least the men. Now, onto the films that are released recently. Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was a very funny watch for me, because after I finished the film, I just closed my laptop and went to YouTube for some actual entertainment. The film was essentially a character assassination of Doctor Strange, which, you know what, whatever, they make everybody at this point, so who cares how Doctor Strange is characterized. I didn't give much of a shit for what they did with Wanda, but that's probably because I skipped the show. And yes, you can skip the shows, they're not essential viewing. No studio is going to alienate audiences in cinemas for not subscribing to a streaming service. Thor was a film that seemed to actively sabotage itself. There was nothing I liked in Doctor Strange, but there were a few things I liked in Thor Love and Thunder, and it seemed the film seemed intent on sabotaging itself. I have a theory that Taika is going through some shit, or he has other projects he's interested in working on at the moment, because this was not it at all. Frankly, I think the transition from something of an experiment in phase 1 to more of a business in phase 4 has essentially turned the MCU into clickbait. All they care about is that they market the film hard enough for you to buy a movie ticket. Which takes me on a segue to the shows. I mean, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, Loki, Moon Knight. I have a theory that these shows were never meant to be good. I think they're just trying to expand the content library of Disney Plus. Because realistically speaking, it's similar to the business model of Netflix. A lot of things on Netflix are made, if not trash. You will only watch them because there's nothing else to watch and you're on Netflix that night. That's usually what happens. And I think that's what's going to happen to Disney Plus. Adding the fact that the whole franchise is more or less running like a machine at this point, people are overworked, underpaid, and the content schedules make no sense. This has been extensively talked about, especially by Brown Table. I haven't been keeping track of the box office numbers. I don't imagine their recent slate of mid to trash films and series has hurt their financials that much. You know, why don't we just check that out? So I find it quite amusing that in the list of MCU films ranked according to box office numbers, the recent films are nearer to the bottom of the list, with the exception of Spider-Man No Way Home. Doctor Strange was number 16, Black Widow, Shang-Chi somewhere behind. Of course, with last year's films, you can probably assume that the pandemic affected them quite a bit. I mean, in their top 5 lowest grossing films, number 3, 4, and 5 are from the last year or so. Fast and Furious 9, No Time to Die, Venom, Let There Be Carnage, Godzilla vs. Kong. All these films also came out in 2021. They decently outperformed Shang-Chi, Eternals, Black Widow. The only MCU film that was still a top performer last year was Spider-Man No Way Home. I think the MCU will be fine in the end. It's just fun to watch it kind of catch flames because I've always been something of a critic of the MCU. The hype kind of irritates me because the hype makes you want to like a film even if you don't. But when you take off your MCU colored glasses, you're going to realize that a lot of the MCU stuff is just meh. I don't know how the recent trend of relatively underperforming films is going to affect the studio, but I don't imagine it to be that much because let's be honest, there isn't that much going on in Hollywood. The DCEU has been struggling to find its feet since 2013. Fast and Furious is coming to an end, and from what I gather, a lot of people have checked out at this point. Transformers is done, Monsterverse hasn't taken off. I keep hearing about horror film universes, but I don't watch horror, so I don't really know. It's sad to see something that was once so good become whatever it is now. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it at all informative or entertaining or something, please smash the like button and hit subscribe. Whether you agree or disagree with me, feel free to leave that in the comments. For my returning subscribers who have not heard from me in about a year, thank you for being patient with me, or I'm assuming you've been patient because you're bothering to watch this video after you haven't seen anything from me in a year. So thank you for your patience. I hope you will continue to support me as I stumble along this process. Peace out.